Hello, everybody. We are back. Another Sunday is upon us, and a couple of things have come in the mail. The first of which I'm really excited about because if you've seen on Jank Pack Thursday lately, I've been opening up a couple of bonus packs of a set of Plasm cards just to try to complete the set. Don't have many of them left, so I figure when I don't get gum, we're going to need a new set to chase, and I got myself a box of Mike Plug Fantastic Art trading cards. Win original Marvel art. That's probably long since expired. Look for quote, autographed, end quote, and metallic storm cards. Look for autographed cards. Anyway, this is going to be a fun one. There's 10 cards per 36 packs. It's a 90-card series, and I know a couple of people who are going to get some packs of these. That is for sure. Taking a look at the back. Mike Plug is commonly thought of as one of Marvel Comics' best artists for his work on such 1970s classics as Werewolf by Night, Ghost Rider, Frankenstein, Kull, The Destroyer, and Man-Thing. He also completed a long run of Marvel's Planet of the Apes magazine, as well as single-issue stints of Conan and Savage Sword of Conan. Well, that means Gary B is going to know exactly who this guy is. The box of cards you now hold in your hands contains the final results of well over a year's worth of hard work and dedication by Mike towards this project. We hope you will agree that the end results are quite fantastic. Truly, this is the ultimate Mike Plug collection. Copyright 1994, baby. Did that say what I think it said? It did. FPG, 2539 Washington Road in Pittsburgh. Huh. Curious. Anyways, we've got a hobby box of that, and we're going to be looking forward to ripping into that. Definitely am. I'll leave that sit right there. Next, and actually final on the agenda, History by Mail has returned. Always love some history by mail, and we start off with an eagle. A Little American's Promise. I'll eat cornmeal, oatmeal, and rice, nice sweet hominy, cornflakes and mush with lots of milk are good enough for me. What in the world is this? At table, I'll not leave a scrap of food upon my plate. Okay, it's a poem. That's why I cannot read poetry, because the rhythm just escapes me. And I'll not eat between meals, but for supper time I'll wait. I make the promise that I'll do my honest, earnest part in helping my America with all my loyal heart. This is a promise, and I hope all children make the same. I'll be a good American and hereto sign my name. What in the world is this? Signed, Hancock School, Parmenter Street, Boston, Mass. Holy crap. Home card. Hang this in your kitchen. All right, well, that's a lot to go through, so I'll just kind of pause it and go slowly. What? Win this war. Okay, so I'm thinking most likely World War II. Okay, yep. Rations, whatnot, because of everything. Abstain from meat on Tuesdays and wheat bread on Wednesdays. Wow. Food and Drug Administration, what you are asked to do for your country. See other side showing how you can do it. Okay, that's what that is. Men of the Allied Nations. Okay, yeah. Must increase our normal exports to 88 million bushels to 220 million bushels. That is massive. A massive jump. Cannot be done, it can be done, but in one way, by economizing and substituting. That's what they did a lot of in that era. An average of 5 pounds of wheat flour per person per week. Really? We pound down to 4 pounds. Why we must send more meat? Food animals of the Allies. This is really. I hope everybody's pausing this and taking a read on it. This is really interesting. Okay, so now that we have that, the question is... Oh, I was incorrect. Completely incorrect. World War I rationing card and nursery rhyme. The U.S. Food Administration created the enclosed card during World War I, inspiring Americans to ration their valuable food supplies with specific suggestions for how to ration various foods. Also enclosed is a nursery rhyme, which is why I couldn't read it, that was distributed through the U.S. public schools by the Education Division of the U.S. Food Administration. Wait, what? For school children to pledge their support to the war effort. The U.S. Food Administration had an education division. I guess it weirdly makes sense. When the U.S. entered the Great War, or the war, which it was called before World War II, it's true. On April 6, 1917, its allies had already been fighting for over 2.5 years. By 1917, many of the Allied powers, including Britain, France, and Russia, were facing starvation as farms had turned into battlefields or had been left to rot when farmers were sent to fight. World War I also disrupted transportation routes, making food distribution a challenge. On August 10, 1917, 4 months after the U.S. entered World War I, President Woodrow Wilson signed Executive Order 2679-A, creating the U.S. Food Administration with the following purposes. Assure the supply, distribution, and conservation of food during the war. Facilitate transportation of food and prevent monopolies and hoarding. Good. Maintain governmental power over foods by using voluntary agreements and a licensing system. Well, we'll see about that. The Food and Fuel Control Act, also known as the Lever Food Act, after South Carolina, or Lever, maybe, Democratic Congressman Asbury Lever, was a very controversial act of Congress passed in 1917. It created the U.S. Food Administration and the Federal Fuel Administration and banned the production of distilled spirits. All right, come on. What? There are greater things in life to worry about. From any produce that was used for food. Okay, fair enough. I mean, I can see it. It ain't going to happen. Don't forget we started a war over a tax on whiskey. President Wilson had lobbied Congress for the Lever Act as an emergency war measure. However, critics were concerned that the act gave too much power to the new position of Food Administration Director, created a form of national prohibition of alcohol, and hurt farmers by regulating prices. The Food Czar and wartime propaganda. That's right, a lot of offices are actually still referred to as czar. Excuse me, Herbert Hoover, a mining engineer from Iowa, became the first U.S. Food Administration Director, or Food Czar as he was commonly called. Hoover had built his reputation by directing the relief efforts in Belgium from 1914 to 1917 and coordinating food and fuel supplies for America since May of 1917. Even though President Wilson was a Democrat and Hoover a Republican, Wilson felt Hoover had the right experience and charisma for the difficult position. Hoover now had control over much of America's food supply, the authority to fix food prices, license distributors, coordinate purchases, oversee exports, act against hoarding and profiteering, and encourage farmers to grow more crops. Hoover now had a large national audience that would serve him well under his future presidential campaign. That is a staggering amount of power. Under the Food Administration advertising campaigns, Americans were encouraged to consume less meat and bread to consider the needs of America's allied military and civilian populations. The goals were for people to eat less, use fewer essential ingredients, and to finish their entire meals. Widely distributed posters and slogans such as "Food will win the war" urged citizens to reduce their personal consumption of key foods, vital for the U.S. and allied troops to maintain their strength and vitality. Citizens were encouraged instead to eat more fresh fruits and vegetables, which were too difficult to transport overseas. Fair. The Food Administration created guidelines for voluntary meatless Tuesday and sweetless Saturday. Both days were porkless, and wheatless Mondays and Wednesdays. That's a lot of less. Local food boards were set up to help families adjust to meals without staple ingredients. Food boards offered published recipes with suitable replacements for key ingredients, as well as canning demonstrations and other guidance. That's fascinating. Those old recipes really are cool. Compliance with guidelines was mostly voluntary. World War I rationing campaigns appealed to America's sense of patriotism and volunteerism. This contrasted sharply with the forced, World War II conservation efforts to come when food was rationed with books filled with stamps to be redeemed for staple foods. I've seen a lot of those on in various shops and whatnot. In January 1918, President Wilson urged Americans to show their patriotism by following Herbert Hoover's guidelines. American compliance was widespread, and as a result of conservation efforts on the home front, American food consumption was reduced, by approximately 15%, and food shipments to Europe doubled between 1918 and 1919. Relying on the spirit of self-sacrifice, the Food Administration fixed wheat prices, had a price floor of $2 a bushel, and a ceiling of $2.20. That's okay. And bought and distributed wheat. The Food Administration purchased and sold $7 billion worth of food through a new agency called the Grain Corporation. After the war, the Grain Corporation became the American Relief Administration. Interesting. Also headed by Herbert Hoover, and helped the efforts to reconstruct Europe and feed millions of starving people. Children were also encouraged to do their part. You had the Clean Plate campaign. We saw that. Save the wheat for our soldiers during the Great Depression era after World War I. Clean Plate Club was created in American elementary schools and was greatly expanded in World War II when food had become scarce. Interesting. I have never heard of that. War Department. The United States School Garden Army, also known as Soldiers of the Soil. That's new. To encourage children to garden, increasing the food supply. I see that as a very good idea still to this day. Citizens were encouraged to garden in their yards, again, good idea, and in vacant lots that became known as victory gardens. Oh, I've heard that term before. I'm going to wrap it up because these are definitely, can you imagine? I'd still be somewhere on the home card here. The Federal Fuel Administration was also created by the Lever Act and managed, I'm using both just to hedge my bets, by the way, managed the use of coal. Well, there goes Appalachia. The director of the agency was Harry Garfield, son of President James Garfield, and president of Williams College in Williamstown, Massachusetts. The Federal Fuel Administration created a bureaucracy of administrators down to county level fuel committees. The Fuel Administration had complete control of the coal industry. Including production, pricing, sales, shipment, and distribution. Coal prices were regulated at the mine, the dock, the rail, and to the end consumer, whether for residential or industrial use. The winter of 1917 was particularly severe, and Garfield was criticized for coal shortages, especially in New York City and Ohio. That's really about all they had back then, for the most part. The Lever Act also gave the Fuel Administration limited control over oil and natural gas. Distribution was defined based on priority classes, with railroads most important, followed by exports to American Armed Forces, exports to America's allies in the war, and hospitals. Since most of the war, the goings-on are overseas, the order, I guess, does make sense. The Fuel Administration copied the public relations effort of the Food Administration by encouraging citizens to save fuel with gasless Sundays, heatless Mondays, and lightless nights. Other efforts of the Fuel Administration included shortening work weeks for civilian goods factories and closing non-essential factories, which was highly criticized. The activities of the Food and Fuel Administration came to an end shortly after the armistice of November 11, 1918. An executive order on August 21, 1920, terminated the remaining branches of the U.S. Food Administration. The efforts of the Food and Fuel Administrations are credited with contributing to provide the necessary resources of the Allied powers to win the Great War. There's a link to all that if you would like to read it, and I'm glad you stuck around because, as always, history by mail is, if nothing, enlightening. Okay, here we go. Reprinted by special permission of John Martin's book, The Children's Magazine. Again, World War I era, that's an era of history that I think is a little not as covered as some of the others, but I need to do some more digging into World War I itself. So that is going to do it for Sunday Mail Day. We got some Mike Plug cards. We had some pretty interesting history by mail And I think all in all, we had us a nice good time together for the past 15 minutes. So thank you so much, everybody. Hope you had a great weekend. We will see you tomorrow.